need for us to beneficiate the critical minerals that are going to underpin the decarbonization agenda is going to rely on clean baseload technologies, and nuclear is going to feature significantly. So as a country, we say we are not going to be left behind. We'll build a body of knowledge over time. Yes, we lost the momentum. Yes, we lost the engineers. Once we leave this care maintenance, we are confident that some of these engineers that we have invested in will come back home, and working with the universities, we are going to build a pipeline of nuclear scientists who are going to participate in this build program. And we think that is going to answer also our industrialization ambition. And the fact that the IRP says build 5.2 gigawatts of new nuclear build program, again, this is going to fuel that program going into the future. So what does this decision really mean? It's going to enable the PBMR that we can reopen the fuel development laboratories to undertake the research and development. So we have placed them on ice. Now we are reopening these development laboratories and making sure that scientists get to participate in this phase. Of course, driven by NEXA, we are going to ensure that we rebuild the nuclear program and the research agenda in the countries. I think it's important that we have an appreciation that those who are at the cutting edge of new solutions and new technologies in the world have invested heavily on research and development, an area that they were neglected in the country, and we're going back to that, at least in the area of nuclear. And then we know that there are also commercial opportunities. What we know, I said that there's over 80% of these SMRs that are at different stages of development. I make the point that over 20 countries have said they are going to triple their installed nuclear capacity, and we know a big part of that is going to come from the high temperature reactors. Then you must resolve the supply side. How are you going to fuel these high temperature reactors? We know, as I stand before you, that it's only one country in the world that is a supplier of this fuel, and is a major player globally, export player. Domestically, China is the biggest, is going to surpass the US once they bring into commercial operation some of the reactors that are under construction. So domestically, they'll have sufficient demand. But they also know, the Chinese, that globally, with the exponential rise of SMR, they are going to be a dominant player, in fact, enjoy a monopoly. With the introduction of the work that we are doing, we are going to be another player in that space. So there are there's a commercial proposition that we're making, that South Africa has consistently punched above its weight. On the nuclear side, the only country on the continent that has got active reactors. Of course, the Egyptians are now working on that. So we are some of the leading countries in the world, if you were to measure that from the time that we've been participating in the nuclear complex, and also the fact that we're also on the research side. So we're coming in there to ensure that we're part of the suppliers of high temperature reactors going into the future. And then next, I will also that we reactivate key facilities. Like I said, we are going to fuel development laboratory for nuclear fuel qualification. So we're placing ourselves now as big players in the world on the nuclear side. So as we explore and proceed to build our own program, we think that we can play a big role on the fuel side. And then they're also going to reactivate the helium test facility for systems testing and reactor readiness. Again, we are placing ourselves as one of the key players on the research side in relation to the nuclear fuel cycle. What NEXA will do is that we are not going to rely on the fiscus. The fiscus is constrained. We're still having significant pressures on the fiscal side, so it's not our intention to tamper with the fiscal envelope. But like I said, the demand and the suitors to partner with us is insatiable, and we are going to seek those partners. These conversations would not be possible if we have not lifted the care and maintenance, and now South Africa is going back to its rightful place as a major player on the nuclear fuel cycle. And we are confident that over a period of time, will be a dominant and indispensable player on the nuclear side. And of course, what Nexa will do what we call vendor identification, the players that are already playing in this space. We have lost time because over that period when we close place care maintenance on the PBMR, it meant that we have lost significant amount of time. We have lost about 16 years of development. So we've got every ambition of catching up. Catching up means that partnering with those who remain in the space and ensure that the benefits are symbiotic, they are mutually reinforcing. Next, I will also work on the multi-purpose research reactor 2021. Cabinet took a decision that, of course, we are proceeding with the multi-purpose research reactor. There's a research reactor that is there, Safari. We are not closing that. We are just expanding the flow of our capabilities for research. And of course, we initiated the licensing through our regulator for the construction of the multi-purpose reactor. We started that process in 2021. Just to give you a sense, we are a big player on the detection and curing of cancers. The field of medical science that is concerned with cancers, that is oncology. Nexa is a big part. We have New Mary here. They are doing medical applications. We account for about 20% of the supply of isotopes across the globe. So we're not looking for nuclear simply for purposes of electricity generation, but also for purposes of medicinal purposes, the issues of oncology. We have completed the feasibility study. The report was approved in 2024. And of course, we have given Nexa the money, 1.2 billion rand as seed capital, and Nexa will syndicate other players to ensure that we are able to build our capabilities. So the point I'm making is that South Africa is now announcing its ambition that first we are going to build our own domestic generation from nuclear, the 5.2 gigawatts, and then we want to play globally, and that's why we lifted the care and maintenance on the PBMR. And then the other thing, as I complete, is that we need to store this spent fuel and also nuclear waste somewhere. It must be safely stored so that it doesn't undermine like safety of people because it continues to be reactive nuclear even after the spent fuel. So we have established an entity called NRWADI. NRWADI is meant to ensure that it comes with disposal solutions for all classes of radioactive waste. So this entity, detached from Nexa, detached from ESCOM, must find ways of safely storing this waste. We know ESCOM is spending a lot of money on-site storage of the nuclear waste at Quebec. We want to remove that waste from Quebec and place it somewhere else. And of course, NRWADI is doing that. So what is NRWADI doing? Of course, we are establishing the National Radioactive Waste Disposable Institute. That is NRWADI. I'm sorry, was established some time back. Like I said, it's meant to ensure that it stores all classes of waste. There's a site already that is active called Valputs. We are now storing low to intermediate level waste. That's where we are doing. That's what we are doing now. But we are going to ensure that we now are able to disposed of the spent fuel, that which is at Quebec. I did say the point that Quebec now, the 2 units will operate until 2044. So it's important that the spent fuel gets to be stored offsite, and that's what NRWADI will be doing. So we are going to be investing up to 2.1 billion rands for purposes of establishing what we call the Central Interim Storage Facility, which will be designed to also store the spent fuel. And then over the long term, we want to have what we call the deep geological repository. Already, NRWADI is doing the siting again on Valputs. There's only one country that has got the deep geological repository. We want to follow on the footsteps of one of the country that is already leading. But in the interim, we are working on the Central Interim Storage Facility. I'm making this point just to illustrate that we are addressing the entire fuel life cycle. from the cradle, of course, participating in the fuel cycle. We are looking at partnering with some of our neighboring countries for uranium, the enrichment of uranium as a fuel that is going to power our nuclear program. And like I said, we want to participate in the entire nuclear fuel cycle. We are going to exploit this energy resource to give us the electricity for purposes of isotopes, and then we are going to bury it in bulk. So we are addressing the entire fuel life cycle. So we are confident that we are going to achieve this. So I'm making the point that South Africa has entered a new era of the energy complex. So again, the fossil fuels, they'll continue to power our electricity demand, but we are gradually transitioning at the pace and scale that the country can afford to cleaner forms of energy, cleaner form of electricity generation, and nuclear is a big part of that. We don't just end at that. We've got an ambition to contribute to the development of SMR globally. We know that be one of the fastest growing new installed generation capacity in the world. I think it will only be second to renewables, that is wind and and solar PV. We think that nuclear is going to be a big part of that. We want to participate in the fuel, especially on high temperature reactors. I made the point, it's only China that is in that space. Now we want to assume our rightful place. So the era of nuclear is now part of that complex that has evolved, and the South African energy complex is entering a new era. We will not be left behind. We have made mistakes before, and those mistakes led to load shedding. When in fact we could have built our nuclear program, of course it was soiled by the procurement process. There were no issues around technology. Now we want to clean that and ensure that not only electricity generation, but also in the fuel cycle, create the jobs, industrialize, ensure that we build up and bolster our research and development capabilities so that as we grow this economy, we're introducing new skills, high-end skills, we're able to service the continent and its ambition to industrialize and ensure that we address the electricity hunger of 600 million people on the continent. Our ability to beneficiate minerals that are going to support the decarbonization agenda. A big part of those minerals are on the continent. They'll need base load. That base load must be clean. We know that the answer in part is nuclear, and South Africa will want to be part of that solution. I'll leave it here. Thanks.
Thank you very much, Minister. And at this point, colleagues, the Minister and the panel are ready to provide you with further clarity. And therefore, the question and answer session is open. The floor is open for questions. And we will stick to our established format. We'll take 2 rounds of questions. And in so doing, we'll start with the media that is in the room, followed by questions shared online. And then please do introduce yourself at the media house that you represent when you pose your question. So by a show of hands, are there any questions in the room? You'll take the second question. So there's 1 and 2 at the back. Any other questions in the room?
Thank you very much. It's that I was supporting from Newsroom Africa. Thank you, Minister. Just on the new nuclear site at Dayton, what would be the approval that you've allowed so far? So what's the next? Are we now entering the planning phase? Transparency and public trust, Minister. What is government plan for public engagement? We know given historic concerns around nuclear cost safety, and I understand you outlined the steps that have been taken in ensuring that nuclear waste is taken care of. That public engagement, what will it look like?
Good morning, Minister. Sorry to be this is one question on just energy transition. Germany announced that it's cutting yesterday. Can you hear me? Sorry, Germany announced last night, this is a climate fund, announced cutting funding, climate funding last month 30. Just in terms of the EU funding for South Africa, billions of dollars being committed, how is this likely to impact on South Africa's just energy transition if Germany, which is one of the biggest funders, is pulling out climate funding?
Thank you. Are those all the questions in the room before Takalani takes us through the online questions?
Thank you, Zagam. The first question is from Martin Town. The question is, can you confirm if there's a timeline to start the construction of the nuclear power station in in Kgosientsho? That is the only question that we have so far. Thank you.
Thank you, please, for those questions. The Minister will direct how or who responds to which questions next.
Good morning to the members of the media and the public. I am going to deal with a question related to the authorization for the infrastructure. What are the next steps? So, as the minister has alluded to, the Department of Environmental and Forestry Fisheries granted ESCOM with an environmental authorization for to build 4,000 megawatts of nuclear energy. At this stage is that ESCOM is planning for deployment of at least 2.4 gigawatts of nuclear power. And so what are the next steps? So the next step is that we have to appreciate that the authorizations that get granted in respect of the are regulated by different regulatory authorities. So what DEF that grants authorization in respect of environmental impact assessment as per the law that governs the process. But also you have the national nuclear regulator also regulated site. And so what is happening? We've got the one from the Department of Environmental and Forestry. Then ESCOM is busy now engaging the national nuclear regulator with regards to the site of the site, nuclear licensing. And there's process going on between ESCOM and the regulator in terms of engaging the regulator, site safety report and all of that. That's the process that is unfolding. And ESCOM will justify to the regulator and got the regulator approved as they comply with all the regulatory requirements. But also there is also then the process of making sure that you've got the zoning of the site and all of that, and ESCOM is busy working on all of those authorizations, what permits and all of those. So it's a plethora of regulatory authorizations that you require to work on a massive project like this. Now, there was a question whether we are now starting the procurement. So what is happening at this stage? We're at a stage where ESCOM is preparing, right? As the owner. And the ESCOM is now busy looking to the specifications of various technologies that they would want to consider going forward, but we have not yet started the procurement process because the tender has not yet been issued. So there's work that seeks to enable us when the time comes so that we can then engage the market. The approvals have been obtained, and that's what our process goes through. The Dene-Fontein site that has been approval and the steps forward to deal with it.
Good morning to the members of the media and the public at large. From my side, I think whilst the questions do relate to Dene-Fontein under ESCOM, we congratulate ESCOM for the approvals that they have received in the recent past, and we support them as NETS. However, it would be amiss for me not to welcome the the cabinet decision that the minister is making as the main point of convening today. And as next now, what we are doing is to take and embrace the new era that the minister has told us, ushering South Africa into a era of reactivating the entire nuclear fuel cycle in South Africa. We as Nexta will take forward PBMR technology as it is being from ESCOM to us next. We'll also take forward the initiative of, whilst uplifted out of care maintenance, we'll start with low-hanging fruits of utilizing the physical assets that already exist at the Nexta site in the form of the fuel development laboratory, where we'll start producing the fuel that we've done in the past of the highest standard for the PBMR type designs. And secondly, using the helium test facility. Whilst in parallel, ensuring that we are looking at the IP that we have mothballed since 15 years ago to see what remains of it and how we can partner in the next stage. So ours is to notice and acknowledge the path ahead in terms of partnering, looking for a suitable partner, and making sure that we resuscitate this technology and ensure that we bring most desired benefits for South Africa and the continent at large of energy security, decarbonized energy, process heating is also clean, as well as ensuring that we provide affordable and clean energy to the society. Those are the key comments I have. Thank you.
Thank you, colleagues. Maybe just to Katleho's question, as part of the extension of life for Kubek Unit number 1 and now Kubek Unit number 2, the National Nuclear Regulator would have engaged in extensive public consultations, especially the affected communities there, just to have an assurance Kubek is safely operating. But if there are any concerns that requires the attention of the regulator, of course, the regulator will insist as part of the licensing conditions for ESCOM to address those. So by virtue of the fact that they have received the license, it means that the regulator is more than what ESCOM has committed to from a safety point of view. And I must make the point that even when you, as DG Mbambo was making the point, when you go into more the virgin side or greenfields new build program, we have from an environmental the approvals for Fontaine, and once you want to go into construction again, rigorous requirements from a safety point of view. And of course, the cost, you are absolutely right. It's something that gets to be answered, like I said, when we will be coming out now with a procurement program, and we'll be able to share the rest of the country how we going to address those. So those are valid issues, and of course, it's important that we subject this exercise to a much more transparent and robust public engagement, because that's what harmed the past process. And then the question with regards to Germany scaling down on the jet funding, I must say that I'm not familiar with that announcement. So I'm working on the assumption that indeed the Germany made that announcement, and I have no doubt I have no reason to doubt what you just shared with us. Of course, it will be devastating. Of course, I mean, without necessarily knowing whether what they've committed to South Africa is also part of what they're cutting. So worst case scenario, if it's also affected, that's devastating. Devastating because, as you know, that the Americans have pulled out, and now likely be the Germans pulling out. That's not going to dictate our momentum, I think, as a country, to ensure that we sit on this just a energy transition program. We've always accepted that at the core of this, we have to fund our own transition. Of course, we'll go to multinational fora, make the argument on the obligations of the industrialized countries, the more high emitting countries. But we do appreciate that finally it's about the interest of South Africa. So if it calls for us to find new innovative instruments to finance this, we're going to do that. But of course, we'll wait for a more formal communication from the Germans, and from that, we should be able to fashion a response. I happen to also chair the interministerial committee on the jet. I'm sure they'll communicate to me formally, and then we'll see how best to respond to that. But I think the assurance I want to give is that the momentum on the decarbonization, the just energy transition is something that will not be slowed down. Of course, at all times, looking at the energy mix that support our own conditions and also our rights to ensure that we are energy secure, we are able to use our endowments for to meet our electricity demand. So that will always be at the core of the work that
Morning. There was a question relating to public participation with regards to radioactive waste management. I think, yeah, as the minister indicated, that we have the National Radioactive Waste Disposal Institute, which is independent from the waste generators. And that is in line with international best practice. So Nradi have joined the club of 10 independent waste operators in the world, independent from your waste generators. At the heart of radioactive waste management is transparency, openness, and inclusivity. And we have no desire or intention to be declared constitutional delinquents. In terms of Section 195 of the Constitution, it speaks about transparency, public participation, um, in terms of giving our stakeholders the necessary information so that they can meaningful participate in any progress or program. So yeah, we are a constitutional democracy and we have no desire to be declared constitutional delinquents. Thank you.
Okay, colleagues, with all those responses to the questions, we'll take our last round of questions. If there are any follow-up questions or new questions, please feel free. And we'll start in the room as we always do. So there's one. After Katla, is there any other question in the room? Okay.
Just the last question. And also question here from Newsroom Africa. Perhaps, Minister, I think this is for you. Just in terms of education, skills, recruitment, do we have enough engineers for these projects? Are we looking at, dedicating bursaries, internship programs to our TVET colleges, universities? Because I imagine it would need quite a lot of manpower, but perhaps over the years, just securing those skills base. Is that program underway?
Thanks, Saban. I think it's just a follow-up question from Lori from Bloomberg, asking if there are immediate funds that are needed for this new development. Thanks.
Can you please?
No, but it's an important question you are raising. I should have made the point earlier on. I did make the following admission when we announced the IRP. I said one of the biggest risks to the IRP is the skills that will be required to bring it to life. And in fact, it's more acute on the nuclear side. I made the point that we have not had any build program on nuclear, that after we placed this on care and maintenance, we lost a lot of engineers, nuclear scientists as a country. I made the point that at the peak of this program, I think it employed over 2,000 people, and the majority of whom were scientists. So we have lost all that capability. And of course, we have not seen also the pipeline of a nuclear scientist. And I had made the point that we are coordinating our efforts with the universities, and I know that ESCOM and NEXA in the various respective capacities are also looking to build a pipeline, but really it was less on ESCOM side, on the nuclear side. But what we try to do is to coordinate our efforts so that we are able to address the entire skills ecosystem that will be required to underpin the IRP and also the issue. So that's the biggest risk. But as a team, we see it differently. Is that yes, you map the risk and look at the mitigation, but we see it again as an opportunity for us now on the back of this build program to ensure that there are new skills that are being produced in the country. For as long as we don't stop the momentum on the program, we also must commit them once they graduate. They must learn and then get to a point where they're able to stand independent as an engineer. So it's a function of the build program, but we also accept that I don't think that will generate domestic and over a sustained period to accommodate them. And that's why earlier I made reference about the opportunities on the continent. So we want to be the center of the capacity that is going to support the transition of the continent from transition in this instance when we beneficiate that new generation capacity if it comes from nuclear and these countries are building their own capacity. We want to support that transition from the fact that they are now looking at cleaner, greener forms of base load. Is a big part of that. We want to support that. So we see the opportunity less as here at home, going into the future part of the continent. But we need to stimulate it by ensuring that there's domestic demand and we invest in those skills and we're able to determine the agenda going forward. So that's a big part of that. So thanks for raising. So the point I'm making is that we're designing plan for that. Now the cost for the new build, the new program, like I said, we will announce them at the right time. There's a panel we put in place that way, that's advising the minister, and then on the conclusion of that, we announce our build program, the 5.2 gigawatts that is in the IRP, and how are we going to roll going forward. But I think the lifting of can maintenance of PPMR brings, expands as the flow of technology solutions going into the future that is going to support our nuclear agenda. But once more, thank you very much, and thanks.
Thank you very much, Minister and the panel. So, colleagues, we've come to the end of today's media briefing. I just want to indicate that the Minister places great emphasis and effort on keeping the media and the public up to date with the key developments. So I wish to thank you once again for making the time and honoring our invitation every Sunday. You have a good further. Thanks.